What if the most feared creature on the planet wasn't a monster at all, but a misunderstood genius waiting to be heard? When a human pet sitter gives a legendary beast a bubble bath, he accidentally uncovers a secret buried for centuries. One that challenges science, defies law, and could rewrite everything we know about alien intelligence. In a world where silence hides the truth, one act of kindness will echo across galaxies. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move toward this wonderful story. Miriam stood by the wide window of her cliffside home, staring out at the twin suns of Nahlis as they dipped behind the jagged ridge of Mount Halor. Her fingers tapped absently against the side of her mug, long gone cold. Inside, silence wrapped around her like a thick blanket, but it didn't bring peace. Corax had been pacing for hours. His heavy steps echoed through the polished stone floor, each one a reminder that her time was running out. The communication orb on her desk glowed with a soft blue light, still repeating the same message from the Central Council. Miriam was required to attend the planetary summit, no excuses. The issue was, she had no one to care for Corax, and she couldn't bring him. No transport would allow a creature classified as level 5 cautionary on board, not after what happened last year in the southern province. But she knew better. Corax wasn't dangerous, at least not to her. He was protective, intelligent, and misunderstood. His massive feline-like body, covered in dark crimson fur and streaked with lighter markings, gave him the appearance of something wild. His glowing sapphire eyes could terrify even the bravest soldier. But Miriam knew he was more than his looks. She'd raised him from a cub, bottle-fed him during Nahlis's long winter months, and trained him with patience and care. Still, others saw a beast. She sighed and picked up the orb, scrolling through her list of contacts. Another message. Another refusal. Sorry, Miriam, I'd love to help, but Corax is a bit much for me. That was the kindest one so far. Most simply ended the call as soon as she said his name. She slumped into her chair, burying her face in her hands. How could she leave him? And yet, how could she ignore the summons? A low growl rumbled from the next room, and a moment later, Corax padded into view. His massive head nudged her knee gently. She looked down into his bright, questioning eyes and managed a small smile. I know, old friend. I'm trying. Corax blinked slowly, his version of a nod, and settled beside her, curling his bulk into a neat coil of fur and muscle. Just then the door chime rang, a sharp tone that made both Myron and Corax jump. She wasn't expecting anyone, especially not this far up in the cliffs where neighbors were rare and visitors rarer. She tapped her control panel and checked the outside view. A tall figure stood on the stone path leading to her door. Human. That alone was strange. Humans were still newcomers to Nahlis, having only arrived from their nearby colony a decade ago. This one looked relaxed. He wore a thick brown jacket, dust-covered boots, and had a travel pack slung over one shoulder. Short, messy blonde hair and a beard gave him the air of someone who lived closer to the wild than the city. He smiled at the camera and waved. Cautiously, Miriam opened the door, but kept her body between Corax and the stranger. Can I help you? She asked, trying not to sound wary. The human grinned. Heard you're looking for a pet sitter. She blinked. Excuse me? I'm Bram, he said, holding up a small card. I specialize in large and unusual animal care. I was working down in the valley when someone mentioned a beast no one can handle up here. Thought I'd come take a look. Before Miriam could respond, Corax stepped around her, his massive frame brushing against her side. He stood tall, fur bristling, and released a low, warning growl. His lips pulled back slightly to reveal gleaming white teeth. To Miriam's shock, Bram didn't flinch. He didn't back away or even look alarmed. Instead, he crouched slowly, keeping his hands in view, and said in a calm voice, Hey there, big guy. You're something else, aren't you? Corax growled again but didn't move. Bram extended his hand, palm down, stopping just short of Corax's muzzle. Miriam held her breath. This was when others usually turned and ran. But Korax sniffed Bram's hand, hesitated, then bumped his nose gently against it. "No way," Mirain whispered. Bram smiled, scratching behind Korax's ear. "Looks like we're going to get along just fine." Mirain couldn't believe what she was seeing. Korax didn't let anyone near him, not the council's best handlers, not even her own research assistant. "How are you doing this?" Listen," Bram replied. "Animals, no matter where they're from, they tell you what they need. You just have to pay attention." She crossed her arms, studying him carefully. "You do know he's a Tier 5 classified companion species. He's injured people. Seriously." "I read the reports," Bram said, now casually petting Korax like it was no big deal. "But every one of those incidents involved someone treating him like a monster," Mirain wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him this wasn't the same as working with Earth creatures or even other alien species, but the evidence was literally nuzzling Bram's shoulder. She let out a breath and said, "If I go, it would be for 5 days." "I've got time," Bram said. "And from the looks of things, he's already decided I'm acceptable." Mirain looked between the human and her enormous companion, her thoughts tangled in disbelief and curiosity. She had no idea who this Bram was, or how he'd managed to win over the most feared animal on Nalus in less than 5 minutes. But maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something different, something she hadn't seen coming. Bram had never considered bubble baths a part of alien diplomacy. Yet here he was, standing waist-deep in a warm stone tub, shirt soaked, pants rolled up, and a giant crimson-furred creature purring beside him like an oversized house cat. He wasn't entirely sure how the day had taken this strange turn. But, then again, life on Nalus never quite went by the book. The creature beside him was Korax, massive, sharp-toothed, and previously believed to be allergic to friendliness, much less soap. His kind, known as Maliths, were thought to be solitary, dangerous, and certainly not fans of water. The Planetary Council had entire protocols dedicated to keeping Maliths at a safe distance. People feared them. Scientists studied them from afar. No one, and Bram truly meant no one, gave them bubble baths. Except Bram. 3 days earlier, Mirain had left for a government summit, reluctantly trusting Bram to watch over her companion beast while she was gone. She'd warned him about Korax's history, told him how others had tried and failed. Most didn't even make it past the front door. Yet when she returned early, stepping through her courtyard gate, she stopped cold at the sight before her. There was Bram, humming a tune from Earth, casually scrubbing thick soap through Korax's gleaming fur. The beast sat still, almost regal, as the white foam coated his back and shoulders. His huge tail swayed lazily across the stone, and he was purring, low, steady, and clearly content. Mirain blinked. Then she blinked again. Nothing changed. The impossible scene remained. "What are you doing?" she managed to say, nearly dropping her datapad in shock. Bram turned with a wide smile, water dripping from his beard. "Giving him a bath," he said, as if that explained everything. "He rolled in something sticky earlier. I think it was some kind of sap. Poor guy was miserable." "But you're using soap," she said, voice high with disbelief. "He's not supposed to tolerate soap or water or strangers." Korax let out a rumbling yawn and leaned against Bram, clearly disagreeing with everything she just said. Bram shrugged, clearly unbothered. "He walked right into the tub after I filled it. I just followed his lead." Mirain stepped closer, shoes crunching softly against the gravel. Her eyes darted between the beast and the man, trying to piece together how her famously moody companion had transformed into this bubble-covered ball of joy. She had spent years with Korax. She had nursed him back from near death. Yet in all that time, he'd never behaved like this. And Bram, well, Bram was a puzzle all on his own. He wasn't a trained xenobiologist. His work history was a mix of wildlife tracking, emergency response, and a few odd jobs Mirain still hadn't figured out. But he had a way about him. A calmness. A patience. Animals responded to him, apparently even dangerous alien ones. He really seems to like it, Bram added, reaching for a fresh sponge. Korax stretched his long neck and leaned into the scrubbing. Miran stood there, arms crossed, unsure whether she was annoyed, impressed, or utterly enchanted. Probably all three. You do realize this kind of interaction goes against everything the Council believes about Maliths, she said. Bram chuckled. Maybe the Council needs better data. Later, after the sun had dropped below the mountains, Miran sat beside Bram on the edge of the bath. Korax dozed nearby, fur fluffy and clean, snoring softly like a rumbling landslide. The smell of soap still clung to the air, mixing with the sweet scent of blooming trees. I've never seen him like that, Miran said quietly. I didn't do anything special, Bram replied. Just treated him like I would any other creature, gave him space, let him decide. Miran turned to look at him, watching the way his face softened when he talked about animals. There was no arrogance in his voice, no showy pride, just honesty. It's strange, she said. Seeing everything I thought I knew about him turned upside down because you did Bubbles. Bram grinned. Bubbles can be powerful things. They both laughed. It felt easy, natural, like the tension that had filled her home for so long had finally floated away with the suds. She realized in that moment that Bram wasn't just a pet sitter. He was something else entirely, someone who saw through the fear, the assumptions, the labels, someone who made space for trust. Miran glanced at Korax, now sprawled across half the courtyard like a satisfied prince. Then she looked back at Bram. Do you think, she said slowly, that if Korax can change, maybe others could too? Bram didn't answer right away. He just nodded toward the stars beginning to show above them. Everything changes, he said. We just have to stop being so afraid of what we don't understand. And there, under the night sky of an alien world, with a giant beast snoring beside them and leftover Bubbles clinging to their arms, it felt like something had shifted. Small and simple maybe, but enough to ripple outward, just like soap in still water. The valley was not on any official map. If you asked the locals, they'd wave vaguely toward the southern mountains and call it a whisper of a place in which made no sense, unless you'd been there. Most had not. Echo Valley was hidden deep in the folds of the ridges where clouds often kissed the treetops and the air carried a strange hum that didn't quite belong to the wind. It was there, after following a creature through the forest, that Miran and Bram stumbled upon a secret that had been waiting for centuries to be discovered. They hadn't meant to run, at least not at first. After Bram's now famous bath incident, with Korax everything had gotten complicated. A neighbor reported unusual behavior from the beast. The council, already uneasy with Miran's research, became suspicious. Then came the warning message. An inspection was scheduled. Korax might be classified as a test subject, and Miran could face sanctions for violating protocol. Bram had looked her dead in the eye and said, if they can't see him the way we do, then we need to show them something they can't ignore. She didn't have a better plan. So they packed the essentials and followed Korax, who seemed to know exactly where he was going. For 2 days they traveled through the dense forest surrounding her mountain home. The air grew cooler as they moved higher, and the trees thicker, until sunlight only filtered through in quiet, flickering beams. Korax, usually casual in his movements, was alert, focused. His ears twitched at every sound. Then, without warning, he turned and pushed through a narrow space between two mossy boulders. Bram hesitated. Miran held her breath. And then they followed him. The world on the other side was different. The valley opened before them like a forgotten dream. Steep cliffs hugged the edges, their rocky faces streaked with veins of silver and green. The floor of the valley was covered in soft grass and strange glowing plants. A small lake shimmered in the middle, fed by a slow waterfall that made no sound. Instead, it seemed to sing, a deep, echoing tone that vibrated in the chest more than the ears. Miran stepped forward, wonder blooming in her chest. I've never seen anything like this, she whispered. Bram only nodded. his eyes wide. Korax walked ahead without fear. Then came the real surprise. From the trees on the far side of the lake, others emerged. Beasts just like him, crimson and gold fur, striped backs, massive paws, glowing eyes, appeared, one by one, moving in slow, steady steps. Miran instinctively grabbed Bram's arm, her heart thumping. But Korax didn't react with alarm. He walked directly toward the group. The others greeted him with sniffs, gentle nudges, and low, melodic purrs. One rolled onto its back just as Korax often did when he was relaxed. Another mimicked a stretch, touching one paw to another's shoulder in a gesture that looked almost social. "They're not solitary," Miriam said in disbelief. "They're a pack, a family." The creatures began to form a loose circle, and then something even more unexpected happened. One of them raised its paw and made a movement, 2 taps to its chest, then a slow sweep outward. Korax mirrored it exactly. Bram leaned closer to Miriam. "They're communicating." Over the next hour they watched the Maliths, once believed to be silent and aggressive, move together, play, and use a mix of gestures and hums to interact. Miriam recorded everything. Her mind raced with new theories. The entire classification of their species was wrong. They weren't lone predators. They were intelligent, social, and had a culture. And somehow the official research had missed it. "We have to bring someone here," she said. "They need to see this." "Not just anyone," Bram replied. "Someone who'll listen." That night they camped by the lake. Korax curled nearby with 2 of the other beasts pressed close. Miriam barely slept. The humming echo of the waterfall seemed to settle in her bones. She wrote pages of notes, capturing every detail of what they'd seen. If this valley stayed hidden, the truth about Korax's kind would stay hidden too. But if they revealed it, they risked the council trying to control it, or worse. The next morning, as the sun rose over the cliffs and bathed the valley in soft gold, one of the elder Maliths approached them. It carried something in its mouth, bundle of dried plants and flowers. It placed the gift at Miriam's feet and made the same sweeping gesture they'd seen the day before. "A peace offering," Bram said, "or a thank you." Miriam crouched, touched the gift, and felt tears welling in her eyes. It was more than a thank you. It was trust, an invitation, and a reminder that even the most misunderstood creatures have something to say if someone is willing to listen. They had come to Echo Valley as fugitives. They would leave as witnesses. The secret of the valley could not be kept forever. Not now. Not after what they had seen. And somehow, Miriam believed the creatures knew that too. Echo Valley had chosen to reveal itself. Now it was up to her, and Bram, to make sure the world heard its song. The day the council investigators arrived, the air around Miriam's home felt heavy. The skies were clear, the winds were soft, but something in the silence made her chest tighten. She stood beside Bram near the edge of the mountain path, waiting as the sleek, dark transport descended with a quiet hum. Korax, calm but alert, sat behind them, his glowing eyes watching everything. They had returned from Echo Valley only the day before, armed with recordings, data, and the truth. But whether that truth would be enough was another matter entirely. The transport door opened and 3 officials stepped out. Their uniforms were clean, their expressions unreadable. At the front was Inspector Vorek, known across Nalus for his strict interpretations of council law. His dark eyes met Miriam's, and she saw no kindness there, only duty, rigid and cold. "Xenobiologist Miriam," he said, nodding once, "and the human caretaker. We're here to assess the situation involving the Malith." Miriam offered a polite greeting, keeping her voice steady. "I trust you'll allow us to present our findings." "That depends on what we find," Vorek replied. "Where is the creature?" Korax stepped forward, massive and calm. The officials flinched, but he did nothing threatening. He merely sat beside Bram as he often did, as if to say, "This is where I belong." Vorek raised an eyebrow. "He is unusually calm." "He always has been," Bram said, "once you stop treating him like a monster." Without waiting for a reply, Miriam led them inside. She showed them her reports, the video footage of the Maliths in Echo Valley, the recordings of their sounds and gestures. At first, the investigators were silent, their faces skeptical. But when Corax, on cue, responded to specific hand signals and repeated low melodic hums to mirror the ones in the recordings, something shifted. The second investigator, a younger woman named Ellen, leaned forward. "He's communicating." "Yes," Miriam said, her voice rising with hope. "It's not learned from us, it's their own language, their own system." Inspector Vorek looked at her with narrowed eyes. "Extraordinary if true, but how do we know this isn't conditioning?" Miriam's shoulders stiffened. "Because we didn't teach them. We followed Corax to a valley where others of his kind live freely. We watched them interact in ways no one believed possible. He was one of them. We have proof." Bram tapped the small hollow projector he'd set up. The image of Echo Valley filled the air above them. Glowing trees, the peaceful lake, the circle of Maliths using signs and sounds. The room fell into silence. The only noise the soft hum of the projection. Then Corax made a sound. It was low and musical, unlike any sound the officials had heard from him before. Then slowly, he raised one paw and made a sweeping motion across his chest, then toward the group. "That's their greeting," Bram said quietly. "We believe it means peace, or welcome. They used it with us. They used it with each other." The investigators exchanged uncertain looks. Ellen seemed moved. The older man beside her looked troubled. Inspector Vorek crossed his arms. "Even if what you're saying is true, there are protocols. Unauthorized research, harboring a dangerous species. There are laws for a reason. And there's also reason to change laws when they're based on fear, not facts," Miriam answered firmly. Vorek opened his mouth to respond when Corax rose and walked past him. The investigator instinctively reached for his sidearm, but Miriam held out a hand. "Wait." Corax stepped into the courtyard and let out another sound. This one echoed across the cliffs, bouncing from rock to rock until it came back as a softened hum. Then, from the edge of the woods, movement stirred. Out from the trees came a second Malith, and then another and another. Within moments, half a dozen of them stood beside Corax. Miriam's breath caught. She had not expected them to follow. She had no idea how they even found the way. But there, they were silent but calm, their eyes bright with knowing. One of them stepped forward and placed a bundle of leaves and flowers at Vorek's feet. A gift. A message. Voices beyond silence. Vorek stared at it, uncertain. "They followed you?" "They chose to come," Bram said. "They've been waiting for someone to listen." The silence that followed was different now. Heavier, yes, but full of meaning. The kind that settles between people who have just seen something that changes everything. Hours later, after the council team had left promising to report their findings, Miriam sat beside Bram on the edge of the courtyard. Corax rested between them, his body warm against the stone. The valley below was quiet, but she felt it again, that strange hum in the air, like the world holding its breath. "Do you think they'll believe us?" she asked softly. "They saw it with their own eyes," Bram said. "They heard it. That's something you can't unsee." Miriam nodded. Then, without meaning to, she smiled. They had risked everything, broken rules, gone into the wild, bathed a beast. And now, because they chose to believe in something more, a door had opened, one that couldn't be shut. Beyond silence, there were voices. They just had to be heard.